Hello, and welcome to today's SG Voices webinar. I'm Jed Brewer with Study Groups, and I'm really excited to have you here today. SG Voices was formerly known as the Below the Line Club, but we are your go-to resource for connecting with industry leaders, accessing trusted educational content, and discovering valuable insights that will drive your business growth. And our mission is to empower you with relevant and actionable knowledge tailored to the challenges and opportunities that we face in our industry. So today we're super excited to have this industry expert, Dan Sutterman. He's the Director of Business Development with Upside, to talk with us a little bit about how we can grow our fuel business. The title of our slide is Idle Pumps, Lost Profits, and How to Capture More Gallons Without Site Growth. We think a big picture, the macro environment of the fuel industry is flat to declining volumes, but we don't want our companies to be flat to declining. So how do we move the needle and change the curve on that? So Dan's going to be sharing some strategies around that. I want you to know that this webinar is recorded. We are going to send out the recording as well as the slide decks that Dan's going to be going over after the call today, so you have it as a resource and can also follow up with Dan as you want. We also want this to be very educational. So if you do have questions, we encourage you to type those questions into the dialog box in this GoToWebinar system. I'll be able to read those questions and I'll relay them to Dan at the appropriate time. I know March Madness is going on today, so happy first day of spring and March Madness. So whoever you're rooting for, I wish you very good success in your bracket. But fuel, we're going to talk about that here today. So Dan, I want to turn the floor over to you and Upside, and tell us a little bit how we can capture more gallons without site growth.
Yeah, hey Jed, thanks for having me in Study Groups. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone today. Attendees, Jed stole my thunder with the March Madness joke there. Appreciate you joining amidst the first round of March Madness. But as Jed mentioned, I'm here to talk to you all today about idle pumps and lost profits, and ultimately how to capture more gallons without adding sites, i.e. how to increase same-store sales growth. I'll explain a little bit more about who I am in a few minutes, but for those that aren't familiar with Upside, wanted to give you a super high-level primer. And Upside, it's pretty basic. We're a two-sided digital marketplace, where on one side of that marketplace, we have consumers. Upside spends about $80 million annually to acquire those consumers across a variety of different mediums. You may have heard us on the radio. We invest in social and digital ads, have a referral program and other partnerships, ultimately to get those consumers to download the Upside app, which is a free app that can be downloaded on the Apple App Store or Google Play Store. On the other side of that marketplace, we have retailers. About 30,000 fuel retailers nationwide, although we have been rapidly growing into other verticals, as we call them, specifically restaurant and grocery. So those two parties, of course, are connected from the application and the ecosystem, which is called the Upside Marketplace. And for consumers, that marketplace serves as an opportunity for them to earn cashback promotions and incentives to shop at the retailers that are in the marketplace. And of course, for the retailers, it's an opportunity for you to reach consumer base that you likely wouldn't have had through those personalized promotions. So as I mentioned, I'm on the fuel side of the marketplace. So I've been here over the last roughly 6 years, helping build our fuel ecosystem from about 5,000 retail fuel stations to where it stands today, about 30,000 fuel retailers nationwide on the platform, and have had the fortune to work with anyone from independent site operators all the way up to folks that have independent brands in specific geos, all the way up to nationwide brands, refiners, etc. So we'll cover a few things today. Just very quickly, a high-level touch on what's going on in the industry. We'll talk about capacity utilization and why that matters, and then ultimately what we hear from retailers on what they're doing to improve their capacity utilization. And as Jed mentioned, would love to hear from you all. So if you do have questions or commentary as we go through this conversation, please speak up. All right, so just quickly to highlight where we are today, it's quite an interesting time in the world of retail fuels because on one hand, US drivers are logging more miles in time in the car than they have in history. And as you can see on the screen here, 2024 set a new high watermark with 3.28 trillion miles driven. Now, with that being said, it's quite interesting because even though there's been a record number of miles driven, retail fuel demand continues to decline on a year-over-year basis. And ultimately, that's due to a variety of different factors, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with on the right-hand side of the screen. And we won't belabor the point too much with diving into those, but COVID was really a seminal moment for the industry in which demand was generally increasing year over year. And of course, now that is just simply not the case. Now, as all of you know, the saving grace to that is that the margin environment has been improved. So it's not all doom and gloom, but there is real pressures that are facing operators. And I'm sure these are the types of things that you on the call and others are thinking about every day. So of course, this is super high level. There's other trends that we're seeing, M&A, the increase of big box players into the space amongst others, but very interesting, right? Record number of miles, but with that being said, largely speaking, trips and gallon purchases are down.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that you make, Dan. Like, we're experiencing this flat to declining kind of period. We, of course, have tried to diversify, growing the inside, finding car washes and alternative revenue sources, but we don't want to just give up in the fuel space. So very interested to hear what you have to say.
Of course, Jed, and look, like we are in full disclosure, we're in the fuel business. We want the fuel business to win, and we are believers that retail fuels will not only be around for decades to come, but be an integral part of the U.S. consumers and candidly the global economy for many years to come. So, despite the picture that you may hear being somewhat gloomy, like there's still a lot of opportunity there for operators. If you transition from the forecourt to the backcourt, there were some signs of encouragement, especially post-COVID. We see in the data that consumers just simply got more comfortable purchasing more and more frequently in convenience stores. We have started to see that stagnating a little bit, especially when adjusting for inflation. And the large reason for that, just simply put, is that people are uncommitted. One of the interesting abilities that we have at Upside by working with millions of consumers is we get to survey them and just ask them their thoughts, not only on the retailers that they purchase with, but the economy more broadly. And the resounding feedback that we've gotten is that they're prioritizing their own needs over brands and loyalty. And that's across locations and formats. And so when we ask them how they purchase, they spread their purchases around. Price is obviously generally a pretty large component of that and continues to be. But the short of it is that even if you look at it from a C-store perspective, you're fighting not only with the other C-stores, but QSRs, and other businesses for a share of that consumer's mind, wallet, and really just their attention in general. So that's kind of the high level of the industry. Jed, I'll pause real quick as I transition to capacity analysis to see if there's any questions from the audience.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking about, and you touched on it some, but how do you see this declining fuel demand and rising vehicle efficiency, reshaping the fuel industry over the next decade or so? And maybe that's what you're going to get into here in a second.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think operators are going to have to think of how they'd like to tackle that, right? I mean, many folks have invested in food service. If people aren't going to be filling up their cars as much, there's certainly opportunity inside of the store to capture wallet. This is certainly geo-dependent, but EVs and operators' decisions to play in that game or not I think broadly speaking, Ted, it's being able to diversify. But like we said, there's still a lot of value in the fuel space today, especially with the margin environment we're in. So I think it comes down to capturing, and there's a fixed number of gallons to be had, if not declining. How do you think about capturing that? I think that's the immediate opportunity in front of retailers.
Yeah, and that margin has been really a saving grace in a lot of ways. It's been very nice, but also costs on the inside of the store are going up, labor costs, et cetera. So you need that higher margin to be able to, pay for the total site that you're operating.
Very true. All right, well, we'll transition to capacity utilization, which let's just define it quickly first, which is the measurement of how many transactions occur during a specific time frame compared to the transactions that could have occurred during the same time frame if the resources were fully utilized, right? Like if there's a factory that can produce 100 widgets, how many widgets are they actually producing in that given time frame? And there's tons of examples of this in the real world. Airline is a great example, right? When they are tracking empty seats on a flight, once that plane takes off, that lost revenue is gone forever. So 100-seater, the airline, you may hear as load factor, they want all else equal to have all 100 seats taken, because again, that if you take off with 90, those 10 seats are lost revenue that you can't get back. Similar concept for hotels when you talk about capacity. And for fuel stations, it's not something I think many operators talk a lot about, but should be. These are assets and investments that are hundreds, if not millions of dollars. And if your pumps are not being utilized, you should think about how to, one, track that, but two, solve for that. And so, Jed, that's the interesting thing that that we have the opportunity to actually measure with some of the retail partners that we're fortunate to call partners, is that we can actually help them understand what this looks like for them today. Now, this data is in aggregate across roughly the 30,000 retail fuel partners we have on the Upside network. And what we found is that only 24% of the time are those assets being utilized fully. Now, of course, there will be times such as the morning rush or the evening commute, and maybe even some holidays in which the average station capacity is operating at much higher than that. But the fact of the matter remains is that stations have empty pumps and they have margin to earn. The problem is to solve of how to take advantage of that, because again, we're in the fixed to declining environment. Like once that consumer drives by your station, they're gone, at least for that purchase, until they need to fill up again. So again, it's like, Dan, really, you're telling us that's the groundbreaking insight, is that stations have empty pumps? Yeah, really, because it's a big opportunity and retailers should be thinking critically about how to solve for that. So
it is a big opportunity. Yeah, if the pumps are sitting at 100%, it's what do you do about it? You just take the price up, but certainly the opportunity exists to get better utilization.
Of course, and look, there are, to your point, like maybe for good reason, operators would not want to operate at 100% capacity. There are some implications from the consumer experience that come with that. I live in Texas and had the fortune, or I guess you would say misfortune, depending on how you look at it, of going to a Buc-ee's last weekend, and the pump capacity was pretty high, I'll tell you. So you get a wide range of strategies in the industry, but that's just simply the data that we see from our retailers, Jed, is that there are plenty of pumps open and margin available to win.
Mm-hmm. A question on that: do you think there are too many pumps in the market?
Could be. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because on one hand, the fuel demand numbers going down. 2024 marked the second straight year in which the total number of fuel stations increased by 1.5%, which it also increased year over year in 2023. And so, that's why we call it the zero-sum era. There's less gallons available for more operators. Are there too many? It's probably a geo-based answer to that. But there will be winners and losers, I think. It's just, it remains to be seen who that is.
Well, tell us how we become the winners.
Of course, yeah. And so, like, if this is the problem, and the question then becomes, like, how do you solve it? And I think what we see from a lot of retailers, and I've had the opportunity to attend quite a few conferences the first part of this year, and a lot of them are inherently focused on bottom of the funnel strategies, right? Like, what are you doing today to serve your current customers? And to be clear, like, that is critically important for your business, because if you don't have a good operation with good service that's clean, that can get customers what they want, you're probably going to struggle. But it goes back to the old line of Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. Well, maybe, right? Like, you should be focusing on how to run a good operation, which is focusing on your existing customers. But operators also need to think of what's beyond the bottom of the funnel, right? The middle of funnel, to engage customers that maybe purchase with them infrequently, and certainly the top of funnel, which is for the universe of customers that haven't heard of you or haven't been to your locations before. How do you engage them, right? It's a chicken and the egg problem. You can have the best offering in the world, but if they don't know that you do, what's going to compel them to stop into your store? And historically, Jed, a lot of the strategies have been, like I said, bottom of funnel, but also restricted to line of sight, right? Like, how high can I build my price sign? How creative can I get in my mascot? Maybe you get the wacky airman that dances through the air, right, to get people to drive in. But some popular top of funnel strategies that we've heard from retailers are certainly strengthening brand presence, thinking about how to become more woven into the community, whether that's through brand partnerships or just grassroots engagement. And then ultimately, like we mentioned, thinking of how to go beyond the physical line of sight and to expand reach in a digital fashion, especially given that nowadays everyone's holding a smart computer in their pocket, and in many cases in their car. And so just to dive through these one by one in a little bit more detail, strengthening your brand presence is certainly one to dive into. And I think, candidly, for many of the operators here, it is where they can separate themselves from the independents. And many of you are already investing quite heavily in doing this. So, think of what sets your location apart. What makes you unique? Do you have a certain offering? Maybe it's a hot food item or specialty item that consumers, when they see that, they think of you. Are you known for a great service or unique in-store experience? Like, what truly sets you apart? Brand partnerships and community engagement, again, also a great way to get your name out and try to start to improve that top of funnel folks that may not be partnered with you today. And we've started to see some folks get pretty creative with this, even with influencers and trusted local figures. There's a retailer in Tennessee, Weigel's. I was grabbing breakfast with them a few weeks ago, and one of the gentlemen there was telling me about how they use NIL, name, image, and likeness, to pay some college athletes who are super well known and supported in the community to get the word about their brand and their offering and who they are. So it's really encouraging retailers to think outside of the box of what's possible. And then that leads right into expanding your reach digitally. This has been something that you obviously have started to hear a lot more about given recent years. And now that folks mostly have loyalty programs, that's an opportunity to engage current customers, and you should continue to invest digitally in loyalty and communicating with those customers. But thinking of how can I actually get the word out of who I am and what I do to those folks that aren't in my loyalty system, right? Can I run geo-fenced or location-based promotions? If you do traditional marketing, thinking of past the billboard, again, past the line of sight. And then of course there's marketplaces. Upside, Jed, is one of them to think of. But more broadly than that, if you do have food service, like, are folks thinking about the other ecosystems that are out there, the DoorDashers, the Uber Eats, the Grubhubs of the world, to just get out there and give yourself a chance to fill that capacity that you likely have today. So I ran through that pretty quickly and would love discussion, Jed. And for the folks that are a part of the call, we have a few reports that I think you may find interesting. Largely, it is just related to the trends that we are seeing. One, across retail, that's total on the left. So across fuel, convenience, and restaurant, primarily QSR and grocery retail, we have basically just sharing what we've heard from retailers and what we're seeing in the marketplace. And then on the right-hand side, we have an in-house economist who will actually be speaking at NACS State of the Industry in a few weeks. Every month, he gives an update of the latest of what's going on in retail fuels and basically just what to keep your finger on the pulse of. So be sure to scan those there. We also have our uncommitted customer report. I referenced some of the data on that throughout the presentation. That's available online through our blog and website. But as I go through my notes here, Jed, I think that hit on a lot of what I wanted to chat about today. And
yeah, I've got a few questions, Dan, just as we're talking through. I think you made a really good point about line of sight. And like, if we think of the evolution of the industry, 10, 20 years ago, marketing was what could somebody see from the street. And today, we're trying to market before anybody ever even sees our store and engaging them digitally. Loyalty programs are one thing that you mentioned. How do you see the evolution of loyalty evolving over time? Many of us didn't even have, say, marketing managers 10, 15 years ago, and now that's a key person on our company leadership team. So how do you see loyalty in particular and that role of marketing evolving as we move forward?
Yeah, you're starting to see it now, Jed. I mean, loyalty, again, our opinion is still that it's a little bit more focused on bottom of funnel as it is, the folks that aren't shopping with you today. But that is, let's be real, that's a super important segment of customer that you want to keep. It's just getting more sophisticated, and you're seeing this where historically many offers used to be a one-size-fits-all approach. But now one of the unique things that many retailers can do with their loyalty programs is they can actually start to personalize and tailor the experience on a one-to-one basis for many of those customers that they already have today. And not only that, retailers are starting to take advantage of that and actually monetize it, whether it's through retail media networks or continue to work with CPGs to think of smart ways to come up with better deals. So I think you'll continue to see that evolution grow, and in many cases, it's being more than just giving someone a static offer. It's being smart and intelligent and personalizing the experience for each customer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Dan. And I was also thinking, upside, you had mentioned you've got 30,000 sites out there in your network, which is pretty substantial. I think there's 160,000, give or take, that are selling fuel out there in the industry. So pretty sizable. You shared the 25 or 24% pump capacity number. Are there other interesting statistics that kind of come out of your data that describe a little bit about what's going on in the fuel industry?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I think for the retailers here, maybe the most are just the consumer insights that we have, because as you mentioned, Jed, like 30,000 fuel retailers, every single one of them is a little bit different. They care about different things. And so I don't want to give maybe a blanket answer there, but at the end of the day, the consumer is the lifeblood of each and every one of you that's attending of your business. And I think the better that you can understand them and what's top of mind for the consumer, the better chance you have of positioning yourself for success. So we have quite a few resources. I mentioned the uncommitted customer report that I would encourage everyone to go to our blog and download, amongst others. But yeah, that is, aside from expanding your reach digitally, Jed, candidly, that is, one thing we're pretty proud of. But upside is the ability to just give our retailers some insights about their business that in many ways are unrelated to the core service that we provide, which is the ability to reach customers to drive incremental profitable transactions.
And can you give a high level of how Upside does that last thing that you just stated, that different aspect of the funnel, but trying to reach those customers that aren't presently at your station?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to really how do I just do this? What can you see right now, Jed?
Your slideshow in a minimized way. No.
Okay, I'm gonna do this. The toolbar is in the way.
Oh yeah, try that.
You can see it now?
Webinar toolbar, yeah. There we go.
Okay, yeah, it really goes back to the first slide, which is we're a marketplace, and Upside takes the burden of acquiring those consumers to get into our marketplace. We take that on, and we have a full team that's dedicated to figuring out how to get folks to interact with our marketplace. Once they're in there, the way that we're driving them to the retailers that are on the other side is through personalized promotions on a per transaction basis. And then once we've effectively delivered that transaction to a retailer, we're actually using data that retailers already have today to go through the exercise of determining, one, was that transaction incremental to their business? Two, was it profitable? And if so, Upside gets a profit share from that margin, and we then take that profit share and reinvest it back into the marketplace to make the flywheel spin faster and grow larger. So that's kind of how we think of it. Is many retailers may not have the scale or the ability to think about how to grow in a digital fashion or what the cost is of doing that is. And we're experts at it, and better yet, the retailers only pay for it when it's incremental and profitable.
And we've got kind of a bifurcated industry, as you know. There's a relative handful of retailers that have significant store counts up at the top, and then down at the bottom, you have all those single site operators. And then you got most of the people that are on the call, which is that middle market of their chain stores, but call it 150 stores or less, on average. Is that middle market, is there a different path to success for that middle market than say for the real big guy or the single site operator?
Yeah, I think, again, going back to every retailer's unique. It just depends. There are some retailers that, based on their strategies, they want to be more aggressive with filling that excess capacity, right? Like they may not be as focused at making, at least for now, a healthier profit at the pump, and they just want to get folks on prem, right? Others may be more focused on really harvesting the profits at the pump and less concerned about what's going on inside. So I think it spans the gamut. I will say, like, the middle market, if you will, there are a lot of advantages that they have compared to both the big operators and the little ones. I mean, the independents just don't have the economies of scale and are so focused on just running the day-to-day ops of their business that they may not have the time or resources to think about a lot of what we talked today. And on the other side, some of the more regional players have an advantage on the big boxes because they can actually build a little bit more of a brand or something that's unique to them and just be more generally nimble. So there's definitely two sides to every coin, but yeah, I think the middle market folks are uniquely positioned to be successful.
Absolutely. Well, Dan, I really appreciate your time here today, and for the audience for joining. Again, we want this to be educational for you. If you do have questions that didn't get answered on the call today, Dan is more than happy to answer those. His contact information, we'll share that with you after the webinar, and feel free to reach out to him with anything. One of the things I was going to say is I'd like you to check out the SG Voices website, where we have more valuable content, including articles, webinars, and industry-specific resources that are designed to help your business thrive. Our next webinar is going to be on April 17th, so save the date for that, and we'd love to see you there. And lastly, we want to hear from you. So there'll be a little survey that'll pop up as you sign off here. Give us your feedback on the webinar and future webinars so we can tailor our content to be most valuable to you. Dan, appreciate you taking time out of March Madness to be able to visit with us today, and the audience as well. And I'm an Arizona Wildcats fan. They always let me down every year, but I'll say it, go Cats. So you guys take care. Talk to you April 17th next time. Goodbye.
Thanks, Jed. Appreciate it.